This episode of EMS One-Stop is brought to you by Lexipol, the experts in policy, training, wellness support and grants assistance for first responders and government leaders. To learn more, visit lexipol.com. That's Lexipol.com.
And so if you can, as the leader in an EMS organization, figure out how to enhance not only that first 80 hours, but that team member experience, it honestly solves our recruitment and retention issues because they want to come to work.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of EMS One-Stop. I'm your host, Rob Lawrence, and we're on a bit of a roll now. We've had some amazing guests, some fantastic topics, a lot of feedback, by the way. So if you've been watching recently, you would have seen my discussion with Dr. Matt Levy and Dr. Christine Carrico recently. That's had a lot of comment and it's got a lot of attention about obviously the topic of the year, which is blood. And the discussion that we had was about, the barriers, but more importantly, how we overcome them. So thank you for those that commented, that observed on that. Obviously, it's a topic that we are going to take forward EMS One webinar as well. So stay tuned and watch out for that. In the here and now, though, we're going to talk to one of our Californian EMS leaders who is doing some amazing things. And welcome to Danielle Thomas. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm always good. And for full disclosure, DT, as we call her, and I work together within the realms of the California Ambulance Association. DT is the brains behind our Stars of Life and our conference planning and all of the sort of public facing stuff that we're doing. And hopefully we can talk about that. But for those that maybe haven't met you or heard of you before, and there's probably just a few of them, give us your backstory, Danielle.
Sure. So about 3 years ago, relocated from the Boston area, where I had been in EMS for a bit, was a paramedic, involved in some education, community initiatives, came out to California, and I'm now the COO over here at Lifeline EMS, and loving the weather in sunny California and all the relationships and networking that I've been able to do out here. It's really broadened kind of my view of EMS nationally.
So here's a similarity as well. Of course, we both sort of emigrated from East Coast to West Coast, and all down the East Coast. And there is a way of delivering EMS. I'm sure we have a different name for wartime and a different name for ambulances, etc. But what did you find the biggest differences were when you moved over to the left coast, as it were?
The left coast is more highly regulated. And so I was not used to the labor laws in California, and I was not used to the way that the local EMS authorities work, coming from a smaller state and consulting in several states. The Office of Emergency Medical Services, as I'm used to calling it, had a different way of doing things. And here we have a state EMS authority, right? But there's all these local lenses, as we call them. And that was just very different. Being a larger state, I just thought it would just be a larger version of what I was used to. And it really was not. The regulatory authorities here run things very differently, and they run things differently from county to county to county. And so if you function in multiple counties, which several of our agencies do, you have different rules in different places and different protocols and different standards. And it's a lot to remember.
And of course, that kind of plays it. And I agree that I had to learn HR all over again as well when I moved from Virginia across to California as well. But also, of course, you're operating across multi-jurisdictions within your organization. So describe your ambulance service and, of course, where you are and what you're doing.
Sure. So we're primarily based in Los Angeles County and Orange County, large service area for several of the private services that are in both of those counties. There's quite a few of us that cover both, some more prevalent in one than the other. We're about 60% LA, 40% Orange County, and cover the breadth of the entire county. Several large hospital contracts, a lot of different committees that we're involved in, of course, the California Ambulance Association, the American Ambulance Association, et cetera. And so although we're rooted in Southern California and primarily 2 counties, we are expanding licensure in additional counties as well, just got licensed in Riverside County. And so, that's a very different experience than before, where we would just get the state to license us and accredit us, etc. And here it's a lot of different people with a lot of different expectations, and you have to meet the highest set of standards, which is not a problem, but some of them contradict each other. And some of them, in one county they like it this way, in another county they prefer it this way. And so, we try to do the best we can to deal with the regulators and make sure that we incorporate their ideas and what their vision of EMS is for the county, because ultimately they're in charge of making those decisions. And we want to make sure that we're part of that collaboration, but sometimes it interferes with what we're doing in another county. And so it's a lot of balls in the air.
Right. And actually, you've kind of helped set us up for where we want to go to in today's podcast. And of course, you are an established leader. You are your leadership thoughts. And of course, you are a contributor to EMS One as well, on leadership topics. But what you've just described for us there, DT, of course, is if you're working across multi-jurisdictions, you've got to deal with policies, procedures, memos, initiatives, and everything else. How does not only you as the leader, but obviously the guys that are out there on the ground keep up with all this question? And obviously you've come up with some sort of a solution for it.
So great question. And I guess the negative part of my brain, because I think that exists in all of us, like I would say not the negative part, but the realistic part. Let's say it that way, right? Because I typically am an idealist. I think that they don't keep up with it, right? And that's the problem, right? And so we here at Lifeline determined that we generally, or the industry generally, has some challenges with the way that adult learners, which are obviously our workforce, and we refer to them as adult learners, even though maybe they're not in school. And so they were adult learners in EMT school or paramedic school or critical care school, et cetera, but they continue on their career pathway. And I think in medicine, we are constantly learning, whether it's our Con Ed requirements that we have all the time, or the companies that evolve, or the protocols that may change April 1st or July 1st of every year, right? And so we applied the same sort of adult learning mentality, which, of course, as we know, remembering, understanding, applying, analysis, evaluating, and then creating, right? That, Bloom's taxonomy. I think that applies to the way that a regular team member or employee continues to learn about someone's organization. And people start in any organization doing some sort of new hire orientation, onboarding, whatever the individual organization calls it. But the fact is that someone new starts and goes into some sort of classroom environment, and then presumably goes into some sort of ride time environment. And then hopefully we're using competency-based systems that now say, yes, you're clear. You can be second on an ambulance today. Right. And I think that if the organization doesn't take an educational mentality or approach to it, we end up with, sure, so you've signed off on the policy and procedure manual, right? And then here we are with the employee saying, oh, I didn't know that. How can you hold me accountable to that? Oh, I wasn't told that. Well, you signed off on this, document here that says you understood the policies and procedures. Well, yeah, but it was day 2 of orientation. Your policy and procedure manual is 800 pages. They asked me to sign it, so I signed it. Is the reality that we live in, right? And so as a leader, engaging with team members to determine what the root cause of the thing that went wrong was, it's a lot of I didn't know. Secondly, it's a lot of inability to apply critical thinking to the thing that they didn't know. They didn't know who to ask. They didn't know why they should ask. They didn't know if they should ask, right? About whatever that policy was. And so I think that most leaders in EMS can agree that probably several years back, the policy and procedure manuals were far less robust. And then every time something occurred that blew your mind, that you couldn't even imagine somebody would do out there, you wrote a policy to prevent it for the next person. And
right.
that's
Yeah, I'm kind of half smiling here because, of course, as everybody listening knows, I'm sure that every new policy probably has somebody's secret name attached to it because of what happened, and your point of we don't want it to happen again, and therefore, that's the Rob rule because of, whatever. So yeah, I think everybody out there has probably been there, done that.
Yeah, it's policy 14.100.3, but it's the
Right.
Rob policy,
Yeah, right.
right?
Yes, exactly.
I think every
Exactly.
company I've worked at, that was a thing. And so we had to create a solution to the problem we had, which was information overload. And so I think in medicine or in a lot of other industries, we talk about cognitive ability and cognitive overload. I know in EMS education, we talk about it all the time. And then some great, huge leaders in the industry who are also educators and solving problems out there, Dr. Antavi for one, right? So like the Handtevy app, the problem was it was cognitive overload on a patient population that we didn't see that often. Bam, an app, a method, and now we can dose pediatric patients, all patients, in a better way with better outcomes. And so if you think about the same philosophy, but don't think about only in medicine or patient care, and think about it in operational excellence, right? We have a void. And so what we've done is we've developed technology, and AI is big everywhere, Rob, right now. And
Yep.
so there's not a day that goes by that I don't get 10, 12, 20 emails saying, are you using AI? Are you doing it in billing? Are you doing it in operations? Is it writing your narrative, right? And so it's quite prevalent. I think we've seen AI for a long time. We've seen it in dispatch software where it could predict where your next call was for years, like many years. We've seen heat maps 10, 15 years ago with large dispatch, and CAD vendors, right? And so the concept of the ability to use AI in a different way is just evolving. It's not new.
And I
Now,
think I'm going to jump in there because that's a really valid point, because at the moment there are schools of thought that say, oh, hang on a minute, AI could contravene some sort of law, could be, could be leaked, could be passed on, could be dangerous. There are the proponents, and I'm going to call out Donny Woodyard Jr. and his book AI in EMS, and actually I'll put the link in the show notes because that's a great primer for all of the things we're doing. I happen to believe that it's an on the train or under it moment, right? That yes, it's happened in the past and we haven't realized it's happening, like with the predictive analysis stuff that we've been doing. The one I always like to talk about is even back in the UK 20 years ago, when you did an ECG, the strip would come out and on the top right hand corner would be the suggested outcome, which we were all told to stick our thumb over and work it out for ourselves, but it was always there. So, on the train or under it moment, we now have to move forward. It's part of our life. We have to embrace it and we have to employ it. And you have employed it.
yes. And so if you think about conceptually the fact that most of the EMTs, paramedics, I'll go with EMTs. So most of the EMTs are in an age range where if they're coming into this either in college, recently graduated from college, a couple of years out of college, they are in an age range where technology was just how they grew up, right? And so while the rest of us had to evolve to all the things that were happening, they just knew it. They had cell phones, they had iPads, they had technology. And for the last several years, AI has been embedded in what they do since high school, since college, et cetera. And so academia would challenge the use of AI. And if you look at some high level professors at some very well known universities and institutions throughout the world, there's a battle going on right now between, well, how do we monitor your use of AI so you're not quote unquote cheating? And how do you embrace the use of AI so you can be smarter, more efficient, more intelligent? Why waste that time on doing the research yourself? It's just about understanding the research methodology. And so I think there's a lot of controversy surrounding it. And I think there's a lot of people who have embraced it. And then people are saying, no, that's never going to work for me. And so interestingly enough, on the medicine side, I was one of the people who said, this is never going to work for me. As an EMS leader, I wanted to employ team members, paramedics, critical care nurses, EMTs who understood the medicine. They were not the people who whipped their ACLS card out of their back pocket of their scrubs or EMS pants to run the code. They knew it. They owned it, they understood it, and they applied it. It was an algorithmic or systematic approach, because I remember in paramedic school, I also was told, don't look at the monitor interpretation, use your systematic approach to interpret this 12 lead, right? And so about a year ago, I was flat out, no, I'm not going to use AI from medicine. Because if you think about it, you go to ChatGPT or other open source AI, you go to Google, it's giving you a global scope and practice. It might not be specific to your state, specific to your county, specific to your protocols, right? I didn't really see a place for it. That was very short-sighted. And so this past December, we really took a look at what the issues were. And we started from a protocol standpoint. And so there's a technology, the source code that we have, that we own, that takes EMS protocols that we load up and program. And so it is not open source AI. It is not grabbing it from some online PDF and attempting to interpret it. And it's applying the same sort of technology or technologically appropriate approach to being able to interact and engage with the medical protocol using critical thinking in the way that many people now use AI. Right? Chat functionality. And so the product that we rolled out and we've tested for quite some time is taking AI, not artificial intelligence, but we call it actual intelligence, because we have seasoned clinicians who happen to be tech people who are now doing the programming and have created an ability for us to check ourselves and to double check ourselves and to have critically minded conversations with our AI solution based off those protocols. And so if you're an educator and you want to do simulation scenarios that are specific to a level of practice, BLS, ALS, CCT, first responder in a certain county or state, all of New England, New York, California, we're growing our database there. You can simply engage with the technology that allows you to do a medication cross-check, differential diagnoses, create simulation scenarios that are appropriate for the protocols of where you're teaching, national registry or something more local. That was the initial idea, which I was against, and then fully embraced when I understood how I would use it as a clinician, and then how the newer clinicians that are coming up didn't learn exactly like I learned and do not synthesize information exactly like I do. And so when they are on cognitive overload, because now they know the information, they've achieved baseline competency by getting their national registry, right? Ticket of entry, and then they get certified in their states in most cases. But now they have another set of protocols and then some additional information and then some medical director options, right? And now add stress to it. Now add, we need you to be efficient. We need you to be effective. You have all these other things going on. Maybe you're a single paramedic working with an EMT, so you don't have somebody who is at your level to bounce things off of. We created the mentor in your pocket. And so we have the paramedic or the EMT of 15 years who's more up to date than anyone could be in their pocket so they can engage with that. That was the baseline idea. My favorite.
So let me just break this down. So what I like to try and do is kind of convert everything down to the size of a oval bumper sticker on the back of your car, right? So not patients, and we've all been there, said, I've Googled my condition. Here's what my research tells me is wrong with me. You need to confirm that. Not that. We can actually go into chat to say, give me the answer to here's a rhythm strip. You tell me what you think it is, and it can probably do that, right? Not that. This is where we take the practices, protocols, and procedures within your organization to allow you to effectively interrogate them when you're out on the job. Yes, no?
Yes-ish.
Ish. Okay, we like an ish on, so that's a good start.
So there's 5 parts to it, right?
Okay.
So one part is the medicine. We'll say the protocols.
Yep.
The way you're supposed to treat and transport patients, the regulatory components that relate directly to the treatment and the transport. Okay. And so that's one part of it. Let's call that a mode.
Okay. That's the mode.
Or other modes. And my favorite is kind of what you were just alluding to. And so when we were developing this and said, okay, yeah, this is cool, right? Because it's cost prohibitive and it is skill prohibitive for most organizations. Like, I like to think we're above average, but just for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to say we're average. We're average size. We're average with the problems that we have that other people have, right? I think we're above average with trying to solve them, and that's what this conversation is about. Yep. But what we were able to do is say, okay, that actual intelligence, that AI, because someone's programming and it's not grabbing everything from open source, right? And it's creating the ability to go back and forth and do medication cross-checks or do whatever it is that you need. What if we took our policy and procedure manuals And we applied the same sort of logic and programmatic ability to interact with a proprietary document. Now, this is the cost prohibitive part, because Bank of America spent millions of dollars and took about 4 years for them to actually stand up something that their internal personnel could utilize to gain their information faster, to reduce the transaction time with the customers who are calling. Millions of dollars. And most of us just don't have millions of dollars to invest in what could be considered a small piece of technology. And so proprietary AI is something that's locked down, that only your people can access, that can interact with you like these large open sources, like your Grok, like your chats, all of those things, right? But it's only sourcing from a select piece or pieces of information. And so we were able to take policy and procedure manuals, which for us is 800 pages. We recently got CAAS accredited, and that added a lot to our policy and procedure manual. We rolled it out right as we were going through the CAAS accreditation timeframe, and we were preparing for our site visit. And I think I was overconfident, but then hit with a dose of reality as I was out and about in the field and engaging in conversations with people in preparation for, let me get my finger on the pulse of when the site visitors go out for the CAAS accreditation. What are those interactions going to look like? I don't want to be surprised. What work do we need to do? Which I feel is part of the self-study process. And that's why it's such a great process, right? And so as I'm out there a couple of months in advance, I'm finding out that their answers that they're giving to me about our policy and procedures are wrong. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. I then took that information and compared it to our incident logs, compared it to our risk, compared it to the complaints and concerns that we had, the violations that we had, our corrective action logs. We believe in coaching, counseling, correcting in a progressive, manner. But the fact that these things were happening and it was a shock to people blew my mind. Okay. And so what if we took the ability of what we've done with the protocols and we made it available for our local proprietary company branded policy and procedure and handbooks? And then we did all that. We rolled it back out. And when I went into the field and engaged with our clinicians and engaged with our non-clinical team members, said, tell me about this. What if this happened? What would you do? What are your resources here? They nailed it. They were informed. They understood the things that made us tick and made us amazing and how we could be compliant. Right? And so any organization or any industry, it does not have to be medicine, right? But for us, it is. Any industry that has an air of compliance to it, which I really think is all of us at this point, right? Yep. Could benefit from this kind of concept of, wait, I don't have to read 800 pages. I don't have to search a digital PDF. I can actually engage in a chat functionality that I'm used to via voice or via text, and it's going to tell me what I want to know. So people were chatting with the app and they were saying, I don't want to go to work today. Am I going to get in trouble? Okay, that's not something you call and ask your supervisor in that manner. You just kind of call out sick and hope for the best and go to the beach. Right? Or what's our tattoo policy? Because it's 2 p.m. on a Saturday and they're outside the tattoo parlor trying to figure out what they want to do. Right? Is my job going to allow me this? Let me figure it out. And so the last piece to this, and why I think it's so amazing, is the reality is that we've written comprehensive policy and procedure manuals that cover the world. Every possible thing that at that moment we thought could have happened and more is listed in there. Some compliance, some regulatory, and some company-based. If you don't know what that policy is called, you have a hard time using the table of contents. And so if our tattoo policy is buried in our uniform policy, it's not as easy to find. Lastly, we also know that the first 80 hours that a new hire employee or team member is with the organization, any industry, can make or break their determination of how long we get to retain them, because it could be their decision. So we know if we can enhance the new hire onboarding by allowing them access to information in a manner that they need access to information, not the manner that we have been used to supplying them access to information. Because we use other company communication apps. Everyone knows I'm a huge a cheerleader for Blink. And we use Blink here. And I've used it since I was back in Boston, a couple other organizations. And we had our policy and procedure manual digitally on there, which is great. I love it. We still use it. It's amazing, right? We weren't able to get people to go to the app to find the thing they didn't know how to find. And nothing would have solved that.
And you've solved that. And so before we go to the break, I just want to pick up on one thing that you mentioned, CAAS. And in an upcoming episode of EMS One-Stop, I'm excited to let everybody know now, we have Sarah McEntee joining us to talk about CAAS 4.0, which I'm assuming that's the number that you went through in terms of the edition and the version of the CAAS handbook, right?
So we were the last of the previous edition. And when we get reaccredited in 3 years' time, we will be under 4.0. But our organization already started to move to being compliant and meeting those. And so we have maybe 2 more things to do and we're already there.
Excellent. And maybe we can talk about the benefits of being a CAAS accredited agency later. But for the moment, let's go to a quick break.
Lexipol empowers first responders and public servants to best meet the needs of their residents safely and responsibly. Serving more than 2 million public safety and government professionals in over 8,000 agencies and municipalities, Lexipol offers a range of solutions that includes policies, training, behavioral health resources, news and analysis, and grant assistance services for law enforcement, fire and rescue, EMS, local government, and other agencies dedicated to public safety. To learn more, visit lexipol.com. That's LEXIPOL.com.
And we're back. And I say this every time. I'm going to say it again. That was the voice of Jim Dudley, who is my voiceover artist, who also is the presenter of Policing Matters over on Police One. Please take a trip over to Police One. Have a listen to Jim's program. There's some amazing guests every single week with some remarkable topics. I'm sure AI is one of those topics. In fact, I know it is over in the police realm. So please go over and have a listen to that. I'm sure we'll link some things in the show notes too. Also, please make sure that you like and subscribe. Don't forget, we're on video and we're on audio. So you can get wherever you get your podcast from, Apple or wherever, we're there. We're also on the EMS One YouTube channel. So you can see us and hear us. And as I say every time, also that if we have charts, graphs, and any other images, we put those on the YouTube channel. And this turns into the webinar you didn't know you needed. So please make sure you like and subscribe. Today, we're talking about actual intelligence, not artificial intelligence. And Danielle Thomas from Lifeline is with us. And so in the first half, we talked about, how we get over that 800-page policy manual when you're in the field and you need to know, and you gave us some great examples, okay, tattoo policies, etc. But there are other pieces of information that we readily need on the ground. And one of those areas, I think, is, you're in a melting pot of language in LA County and Orange County. I know that. And, whilst you have some amazing clinicians on the truck, they don't speak every language. There are language lines available, of course, but you've kind of solved this one as well.
So I don't know if I would say solved, but I would think greatly helped.
Okay.
Right. So I think there's prevalence for language lines that continue because interpretation is different than translation. And I think it's important that everyone understands that truly driving a connection with your patient and soliciting information when it's urgent or not urgent as best as you can is obviously the best way to do it. Translation, however, can be very helpful in a pinch. And so although I think most agencies try to have their team members reflect the communities that they try to serve, it's impossible for us to be prepared. Visitors, Southern California is highly visited from people from all over the world. And so we really do have an array of languages. Our system has a third mode. We actually have 5. So the first was the protocol mode, that's called Rampart. The second is the company mode for the policy and procedure, that's called Angel. The third mode I'm talking about right now, which is our translation mode, is called Nova. And This has about 100 different languages, and it's bi-directional. And so you can take what the patient's saying in their language and convert that over to English and speak English or other languages and convert it to other languages. We have mirrored what Google does with their translation app, which has a pretty high accuracy rate to it. And we've tested it since January. So for about the past 5 months in a very robust area that requires a lot of language use. And we've been quite successful with it.
Is this a speak and then a spoken translation, or is this a type and a typed translation? How does it work?
It's both. And
Okay.
so we prefer the speak, and the microphone option, the audio option, is available across all 5 modes. And so no one ever has to type into it. It has a 99.9% accuracy rate. When you are speaking into it, it will then show you the text. For the translation mode, it plays audio back and it writes it. So you could flip your phone around or your device, iPad, etc., show your patient, or it actually plays the audio back with the correct accents.
So if I used my schoolboy German on your app, it would detect A, the language, B, what I'm saying, and then C, offer a translation.
That's correct.
Wonderful. And of course, with other apps, you have to select the language you think you're using, and then sort of, I want to say something in French, but actually this will pick up that I am, talking to you in a different language.
Right.
Excellent. That's good, and I think that's a real help, because sometimes there are dialects, there are languages that sound exceptionally similar, that you don't quite know where you are when you start, so therefore you don't quite know what to look for in order to have it translated. Or indeed, even if you go back to language line, this patient is speaking a language I do not understand, so I don't know who to ask you to call in order to talk back to my patient. So I think that's a major development.
And I think for all of these situations or circumstances, I remember back on the East Coast, we would have a card and they would point to the language because it would be written, right? But if your patient is critically ill or injured, that might not be available to you. And so I think that this is just another thing that we can do, whether you use it 100 times in a day or whether you use it once in a year. When it's needed, it's needed. And I think it's a really good add-on to the suite of modes that we have.
Right. And you need to, unless you know all the languages in the world. I was watching one of these TV shows where the patient was actually Nepalese from Nepal, and they were speaking the language as Gurkhali. Okay. And of course, I'm shouting at the TV because I'm, being an ex-British soldier, served with the Gurkhas from Nepal, and I'm shouting it. But of course, you have to know first. And of course, we don't know it all. So this sounds really, really impressive.
That statement summarizes the reason that we did this.
There you go.
You have to know to know. And when you don't know, you can't do the thing.
Classic Rumsfeld theory. We don't know what we don't know. Right. There we go. So good. So again, you mentioned devices. So this system that you have and you've developed in-house, it's on your phone, it's an app, it's in the App Store. I mean, how are you getting it to the guys on the ground?
So it's everywhere. So you can use it browser-based, or you can use the app. They're eerily similar. The app has some additional kind of local functionality that just makes it easier when it's on your phone. But you can use it browser-based or you can use it app-based. It's available in the Android store. It's available in iOS as well. It's called InCheck. INCHECK, InCheck. And it basically keeps us in check. It gives us everything that we need to be successful, which is the goal. As the employer, we want to give the employee, the team member, I like to say, the benefit of access to us at all times. And so I recently finished some schooling, and one of the professors said, these top level executives, they should be the most approachable and the least accessible. And I thought about that a lot because I'm really accessible, maybe too accessible. I don't know who says how accessible you should be. But if I have information and I need to share that, regardless of your command structure, it only goes so far. And there's always going to be a place that it stops, and it's mistranslated of how you said it to your management team, to their management team, et cetera. And so I like to be out there and actually get information forward. So if I could be in everyone's pocket, right, at all times and say, no, this is the interpretation of that. This is how it works. This is the critical thinking, and take what I can do or what our leadership team can do and give it to the 547 team members that we have. I mean, who would not do that, right? And so that was kind of the game changer for us.
Wow. So what started as a problem, you've embraced the solution, you've embraced the newest of new technologies. So do you have a sort of in-house programmer genius, or are you working with partners for this?
So it's technically, not Lifeline. It's a company that we have as kind of a side gig, right? But it's way more than that. So yeah, we have a whole development team and a whole slew of people. I think that my point on being so excited about sharing it with you is whether I'm wearing a Lifeline hat as an executive with an organization that was like, I have a problem, you, whoever you are, just solved it. That's worth a lot to me. You've reduced my risk. You've saved me money. You've decreased incidents for me because we've empowered people with knowledge and the critical thinking that they do not have day one, right? So as someone who leads an organization, sold, no problem, love that. With my other hat on in the InCheck world, it was like, well, what else can this solve for me? I have a boatload of problems, right? And so what else can it do? Another one that it wasn't a problem because we took the emergency response guide, and I think most people who have electronic PCRs, which is most people, I think that they took the PDF and they put it on their tablet, and it was accessible because every time I went for the book, the cover was ripped off or the page I needed was gone, like the map books of old days, right? And so we took the ERG, emergency response guide, and did the same thing with it. And so we've programmed it up with actual intelligence because we vetted it all. And now you can chat back and forth with it and just, talk into your phone, placard 193, and it's going to give you back everything that you need without you searching a digital PDF, without you going into an app and selecting something. And so interestingly enough, over the past probably 10 years, even as apps became more prevalent, there's not a state that doesn't have a protocol app or a county that really doesn't have a protocol app. But you have to know what you're looking for to click on the place to get to that protocol, or you have to search it. And this allows the person, whether they're 10 years into their career or they're 3 days into their career, to not have a disadvantage and to be on an equal playing field, which I think is a game changer. The last mode that we have out of the 5 is called LChat. And LChat, these all have like an ode to the LA area, right? So we have Rampart, we have, angel mode, LChat, etc. And so the LChat mode will give you what your today as all of your regular AI open source chat ability, but we've embedded it as a mode in the app, so it's a one-stop shop for you. And then right now, we're about 3 weeks away from the release of the narrative component. And so right now in the Rampart mode, where you're going back and forth about the medicine and you're typing it in, it remembers it just like you would with regular chat functionality. And you can then, give it some info and then simply say, write my narrative for me. And you can copy and paste that into your EPCR, and it's just more well written, right? A lot of people are using chat to write an email just so it sounds more professional.
There we go.
Anything like that. And so we're a couple of weeks away from just releasing that additional component where it's actually going to have the narrative mode as a separate gig.
Wonderful. And I'm just going to jump in here, and for the Johnny and Roy nerds out there that perhaps have never been to or operated on the West Coast, or particularly LA, Rampart is a thing. It's a real thing, and it exists. So what we've heard today is DT and the team in the back office solving a problem that's a very real one for all of us. And who has consumed, eaten, and digested the 800-page policy manual in your organization? We know the answer. It's nobody. So great job on doing that. And before we go, of course, we have the American Ambulance Association annual conference coming up mid-June in Lexington, Kentucky. I'm delighted to say we're taking a boatload, you mentioned boats, a boatload of folk over to be speakers at the AAA conference. You're one of the featured speakers, Danielle. Who are you speaking with and what are you talking about?
I am speaking with the amazing Chief Operating Officer over at Riggs up in Northern California ish area, Carly Strong. And Carly and I will be doing a presentation called Just One of the Guys. And this is going to be a very unique and potentially controversial approach to facilitating a conversation, not necessarily about women in EMS. And so, Rob, the last time we chatted, Carly was there with us.
Yep.
And we talked about how we don't like to be referred to as female leaders. We just like to be referred to as leaders. And the pendulum swings back and forth depending on who you talk to, right? And so not to give much away, but we have a very unique approach we've taken to this presentation, which will reveal the horrors of what is occurring out in the EMS marketplace across the country in regards to development of leaders and how potentially gender roles plays into how people view what people can do in their EMS careers. So I encourage people to come. I think it's going to be pretty fantastic. I'm not sure. I'm hopeful.
Well, so if you're going to be in Lexington, and 800 or 900 of us are, make sure that you attend DT and Carly's session. I'm certainly going to be sitting in the front row, and I'll produce an EMS One quick take on this so we can report back, and maybe we can come back and talk about it later as well. So DT, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. And any final thoughts before we go?
Less about the pitch. It's not a pitch. It's more about leadership. It's more about, and there's probably a million competitors out there at this point, right? And so this isn't about InCheck. This is about, as a leader within EMS, understanding from a different perspective, from the team member level, because they don't know everything you know, and they really don't know what they don't know. And so if you can, as the leader in an EMS organization, figure out how to enhance not only that first 80 hours, but that team member experience, it honestly solves our recruitment and retention issues because they want to come to work.
Wow. And who doesn't want to do that? So for the moment, and I know we're going to have you back on, Danielle Thomas, DT, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Rob.
So that was Danielle Thomas. We were talking about how you can take a problem and, using the technology that's available to us today, craft a solution. And then, of course, once you've crafted that solution, then pass it on for the good and benefit of the organization. Who wouldn't want to do that? DT made a couple of great points that, did you get your employees to sign their policy manual in the first 2 days of operation, assuming they've eaten and consumed the 800 pages? You probably did. And spoiler, no, they didn't consume them. So think about how you can actually ensure that that occurs in the proper way. Also, DT made an excellent point that that your first impressions count, and obviously first impressions in an organization, I think she said, the first 80 hours, right? The first 80 hours affect whether the person stays for the long term and the long haul. Again, what a great takeaway. Have a think about that. Anyhow, that was EMS One-Stop for another week. We'll be back next week with more amazing guests. My thanks to Danielle Thomas. I've been Rob Lawrence. Please make sure that you like and subscribe. And until next time, bye for now.